Welcome into the Cris Collinsworth podcast, and it is my pleasure to introduce the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, Mr. Zac Taylor. Zac, how you doing? That's got to be the worst question in the history of the world.
I'm pretty good, but now we're kind of getting back in this game rhythm. So you try to tune everything out, but we understand that we're kind of in a special time here. And so we're balancing, enjoying it on Sunday after that Chiefs win, and then getting refocused here for the Super Bowl.
Give me just a little bit of that locker room scene, because now, of course, everybody has cell phones and we get a little glimpse into some of these guys' lives and the cigar smoking. But after you knock off the Kansas City Chiefs in their place, beat them for a second time, that place had to be absolutely nuts knowing you're going to the Super Bowl.
It was pretty fun, and it's the second time I personally got to enjoy a moment like that. But it was the first time all year. There was no post-game locker room speech. It was, if you've ever been in that Chiefs locker room, visiting locker room, it's kind of disjointed. And I walked in there and the guys were having fun. And I just thought, I'm just going to let them enjoy this moment and celebrate a little bit. And they sure did.
There's so many different parts of your story that go along with this Super Bowl here. But you were a part of the University of Cincinnati. By the way, the city of Cincinnati is now the football capital of the world. University of Cincinnati is in the semifinals. You guys are in the finals. It's one of the great football capitals of the world right there. But it all started for you at the University of Cincinnati. And basically, Tommy Tuberville lost his job or walked away from his job or whatever it was. And you were kind of without a job, right? And then here comes the Rams and Sean McVay. Tell me the story.
Well, so yeah, I worked for Coach Tubbs for a year there. We finished the season around Thanksgiving. It wasn't a great year. We were 4-8. And then I think on December 5th, around then, the Eagles came here and played the Bengals. My brother coached for the Eagles. I came to the game. It was the first time, second NFL game I'd ever been in. I was in a Bears-Steelers game in '92. And then my second one I ever went to was Eagles-Bengals in 2016. And bought tickets. I was about 10 rows behind the Bengals bench. Didn't have any connections to those guys or anything like that. And about midway through the first quarter, I got a text saying our coach had resigned, staff meeting to essentially get fired, be there in an hour. And so I remember walking down the highway, to my car. It's empty streets. Everyone's in the game, thinking about what my future is going to hold. I don't have a job. What am I going to do with my family? And then a couple weeks later, Sean gave me a call, and I ended up going to LA. So I'm probably the first person to ever be fired in Paul Brown Stadium, and then rehired there a couple years later.
That is a little history right there. Did you have any relationship with Sean McVay at all before he called and offered you the job?
As two young guys, we'd cross paths at the combine. We'd played the Redskins before. So we knew each other, and I think there was a mutual respect there. And so he knew I was out and offered me the assistant receiver job. Told me I had 48 hours. Hey, just sort it through. I'll give you 2 days to sort it out. And then an hour later, he called me back and said, "What's your decision?" And I said, "Okay, well, his energy is so contagious and so infectious. I thought this is going to be a great thing." And so I jumped on board.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was reading the article the other day about your relationship with him and how much fun it was to go to work when you were in Los Angeles and working for Sean and working for the Rams. We go there all the time. We do way more Rams games than I've done Bengals games. So believe me, I know more about them, I think, going into this thing than I do you guys. But it is an infectious sort of energy that goes with him, isn't it?
It is. He's a genuine person. He's so positive all the time. He treats everybody with so much respect. And so it's hard not to follow his lead on everything he does. And he's got a lot of confidence in himself. That rubs off on the players and the coaches. He does a great job empowering everybody in that building. And so it's no shock that they've had the success that they've had since he's been there.
Yeah, and poor Andrew Whitworth now he's gonna be like me. He's in the same situation I'm in now. How the heck do you not have a little emotion that goes both ways in a game like this? But such a great player in Cincinnati for so long. And I heard a great story that Joe Burrow was out in Los Angeles for some treatment on his knee on draft night and calls Whitworth and says, "Hey, do you mind if I just come over and watch the draft with you?" And so here are those two guys, and now a couple of years later they're playing against against each other in Super Bowl. But I know as an offensive staff, you guys learned a lot from that Super Bowl loss to the Patriots. That was a tough day on offense. And as you look back now and prepare for your own first Super Bowl, what do you take away from that one?
Well, I think it's just good to experience that yourself. The week leading up to it, the week of the game, the actual game itself. If nothing more, just enduring that experience so that you can relay that to your team and knowing where their focus is going to be pulled a lot of different ways and how we have to eliminate those distractions. It's interesting because I left the next morning. I got on a flight with Katie Blackburn at 6 a.m. the morning following that loss and came to Cincinnati. And so I never wrapped up the game with the staff. I never immediately watched the game. I had so much to do here. So I've got the memories of leading up and some things that we'll use to guide our own players. But I certainly wasn't a part of the process of recapping the game and what would they do differently.
Well, trust me, as somebody who had to go through that twice after losing Super Bowls, you didn't miss much. It's not that's not a whole lot of fun there. I have to ask you about Mike Sherman. Here's a guy that is your father-in-law, your wife Sarah, and you guys have 4 kids and great family. Love having you in Cincinnati. But Mike Sherman was the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, Texas A&M. He's with the Dolphins, Montreal Alouettes. You go right down the list. Now, as a father-in-law who is looking at this guy who wants to marry his daughter, all of a sudden now you're the one as head coach going into the Super Bowl. What was that phone call like?
You talking about when I got to the Super Bowl or
now?
Yeah, he's texted me as of 10 minutes ago, and it's he's still got that coach in his blood, and he's done a great job kind of being a mentor for me because he's been through all this different stuff, as the issues you run into as a head coach, managing a team, going through the playoffs. He's been in the Super Bowl as an assistant with the Packers. So he's been a tremendous resource for me to have. And he'll be there at the game, so that's really cool. And unfortunately with COVID, people aren't in the buildings anymore. So we haven't had the opportunity to have him around as much as I would like. But he's been a tremendous resource for me, and I'm glad that he's going to be able to be at the game with us.
Yeah, this has been such a special run. I don't know if you can put your finger on it or not. I was going back through 1,000 different articles getting ready for the game. Al and I are announcing the game this weekend or next weekend. And there was a quote from Mike Brown basically saying, yeah, Zac Taylor's coming back this year, like there was doubt or whatever. It seems like so a million years ago, but really this was a football team that had to have this season. And at some point, it all started to click together. Can you put your finger on when you thought that was?
I think certainly there were parts last season where we felt like, man, there's some core pieces here. Even in the Cleveland loss early in the season here in Paul Brown Stadium, and then the Tennessee win the next week, where we felt like, okay, our quarterback he's the real deal, man. And we can do some special things on offense. And then as the season continued to go, you could see those core pieces on defense really stepping up. Jesse and Vaughn and the linebackers and Sam Hubbard and DJ Reader and all those guys. And man, if we can hit on some pieces here in the offseason, we've got a real chance to be pretty good. And so you knew in training camp, we had the right people. It's an unknown how they're going to gel together and what that chemistry is going to be like. You started to see really in December, like, okay, this thing has come together and we can really be a great football team. And that's what's happened up to this point.
We'll talk about your offense here in a little bit, but I've got to start with Lou Anarumo's defense for a second. What they did, I've never seen 2 halves look more different than those 2 halves. You can't stop the Chiefs at all in the first half until you get down to the red zone and they blow it at the end and 5 seconds left and all that kind of stuff. And then total domination by the Bengals defense in the second half. That last 5 seconds there at the end of the half where they don't get anything. They don't kick the field goal with 5 seconds. They try and throw one more pass and the clock runs out on them. How big a momentum shift was that? And when you go into halftime, how different did that feel?
Well, we've been in that moment before. We played Jacksonville on a Thursday night. They were up 14 points. They chose to go for it on the last play of the half instead of kicking a field goal, and we stopped them. and we came back and won the game. So we had that in our background of we've done this before. We've regained the momentum before the half, down 14. But the next part of that was going into halftime down 11 against the Chiefs. We were down 11 against the Chiefs 5 weeks ago, and we knew we'd come back and win. And we knew what the recipe for success was going to be: getting the stops on defense, stealing possessions. Offense has to capitalize on the field position. And that's exactly what happened. So when you can draw from experience that have happened very recently for you, our players certainly have done that. There's a belief there that we can get anything done. We don't care what situation we're in, good or bad. We're going to find a way to get it done. And I think that's the markings of a special team.
You know, there's so many interesting things to talk about on your defense. You love watching the hustle of Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson inside, Logan Wilson, those guys flying around. DJ Reader was a great acquisition. But it wasn't until I really started studying your team that something kind of stuck out to me. And it's the fact that so many of the guys in your secondary are, I'm going to use this word, retreads to some extent, right? I mean, you go Eli Apple, who didn't know how his career was going to end up going. Mike Hilton comes over from Pittsburgh, who I always loved. I mean, he was always in the middle. And if I had to pick an MVP for me in that Kansas City game, Mike Hilton and what he did on the outside in that game and covering in the slot against Tyreek Hill was about as good as I've seen anybody do it. Von Bell, he was not a good enough coverage guy in New Orleans. Jesse Bates been a really good player here. Chidobe Awuzie, okay, he was supposed to be this or that and doubt. And yet they've all come here and you go, this is different for these guys. I mean, it's broad-based. Maybe you don't go, any one of them is the rock star of all rock stars, but together it has really worked, hasn't it?
It is the totality of the group. You know, we had the right people. All those people you just mentioned have the right character and they love football, number one. They all have a high football IQ, number two. But the group together and the chemistry that they play off of each other, they know that they've got to do their job to help their teammates. And so, you know, you can't have one without the other. You know, there's a lot of great individual efforts, but it's just the whole of the group really brings the best out of all of them. You know, who's got a DB background. So a lot of the defensive scheme comes from the back end and making sure those guys can gel. And I think that really helps the process. But I'm proud of that entire group. And it's like you said, a lot of guys that have come from different teams. Jesse's really the only one that's kind of been homegrown here in Cincinnati, but that group is really connected and done a great job this year.
Yeah, they're going to get tested, but they're not going to get tested like your offensive line in this game. I mean, this is a team that is built to get after the quarterback. You don't have to put on the tape very long to understand that. Of course, you've got Von Miller, who came over from the Denver Broncos, Leonard Floyd on the outside, but there's a number 99 that I'm guessing you guys are paying quite a bit of attention to at this point, and Aaron Donald. I would assume you guys wouldn't mind running the football just a little bit to try and slow some of that stuff down.
You got to have a great plan. You know, certainly they've got some tremendous players, and AD's one of the all-time greats. And we feel like every week we played some great players, you know, whether it was the Bosas or Watt or Clowney and Myles Garrett, and then Jeffrey Simmons 2 weeks ago, Chris Jones last week. It's never ending. So those guys have really seen the best of the best. We know AD is one of the all-time greats, like I said. So they'll be tested as usual. But again, we expect those guys to rise to the occasion.
You know, I had Joe Burrow on this podcast during the offseason, and it was probably, I don't know when it was, April, May, something like that. And I remember having the conversation with him, like, are you sure you want to come back and play? Because when I asked him, I said, what do you think? Are you going to be able, because he was still in full rehab mode at that time. He hadn't practiced, he hadn't done anything. And he goes, yeah, he goes, I'm going to be fine. He goes, believe me, I've been working hard on this rehab. I'm going to be fine. Don't worry about it. But you and I have also seen how many quarterbacks come back in their first year after a knee injury, and they're not quite the same. They're just, you know, I mean, and how can you be? People falling at your feet and, you know, that knee and the rehab that you've gone through. Tell me the story of Joe Burrow and that knee, and when did you know? Because watching him escape the pocket and some of those runs that he made in that game last week won the football game for you. There's no question. And I don't think he's doing that as much in week one as what we saw in that one.
Oh, you're right about that. And I think at the end of the day, Joe's human, you know, and so he's never been through a major knee injury before and the recovery of that and playing football after that. So There were some moments that were difficult for him in training camp, where he was just trying to feel his way through it. And early in the season, it was a combination of him feeling his way through it, us trying to protect him as best we can with our style of play. But I really think probably the midway point of the season, after the bye, it looked like he was fully healthy and had the confidence, moving around that he had always had. And so I hate to speak for him that way, but that's kind of where you started to see a shift with the plays he was making on the perimeter, extending some of those plays.
Can you tell me the story when his headset went out and he was out there just calling his own plays?
Yeah. So we had a play going in. I was trying to put 12 personnel in the game, and I didn't realize his headset was broken. So he's trying to communicate to me, my headset's broken, give me 11. So we got 11 back in there real quick to see what he would do. He had to call those 3 plays in a row. Then we had the 2-minute warning. There's a fumble, and they're reviewing the fumble, and it's a 2-minute warning. So he had time to come over the sideline, give a new helmet. And I said, oh, that was great. Your headset really went out, kind of joking, like, I don't believe you for a second. But I said, no, okay, all right. Well, I figured the headset's going to go out about every game from now on for a couple of plays. But, when a guy has prepared the way he does, I think those moments are really exciting for him because, he gets to kind of default to, okay, well, what would I think instantly? What comes to my brain in this situation that I think can be an effective way to move the ball? And that's what you want from your quarterback. You want him to be a guy who's capable of calling the whole play, calling the whole game. And you know how hard that is because you got to manage what's the down and distance, what's the situation of the game. And you don't ever want that guy to have that on his shoulders. But I'm sure going forward, there will be some times next year where he's calling a drive or a series or there's moments where we just let him get on the ball and take it over because he's certainly capable of doing all that.
It was interesting. I had CJ Uzama on, and I certainly hope he can play in this Super Bowl game. He's been such a big part of the Cincinnati Bengals this year. But I was asking him, I was like, how hard are you guys to coach? Now, all I get to see a lot of times is the locker room afterwards and the cigars and I said, is this one of those sort of an out of control classrooms or whatever? And he said, let me tell you something. He says a lot of times Zach's the one leading the way in there. He pulls out a few videos on all of us and he's busting our chops and he's not making any of our lives any easier. And I go, no way. Really? I didn't know that about Zach.
Well, I will tell you this. These guys are probably the easiest group to coach that I've ever been around, because they know that you got to put in the work to be able to enjoy all the success that they've had. And so to answer your question, it is so easy to coach these guys. They're so coachable. There's no ego in the room, and there could be, and a lot of people there should be. Some would argue because of the success they've had. But man, these guys just love winning and playing for each other and doing whatever it takes to win. And we certainly have our moments. It's hard, when you're in a Wednesday install meeting and you got a lot of pass game and a lot of run game, and you're just showing the pictures and some of the clips, and so you got to find ways to interject. Ways to kind of sell it to the players. And these players, they're too active on social media. It's too easy for me. I'm too young. I know how to get on Twitter. I know how to get on Instagram. I know how to find and get into your life a little bit. So I make sure that, when I can sense a lull in the moment in the install meetings that I'll be quick to pull out, one of your cameo videos you made for a fan or something you post on Instagram. So just making sure these guys are careful. And again, that usually gets their attention pretty quickly.
That's awesome. They one final question. I know you've got to run, but with Sean McVay and that offense, your collective offenses, everybody's running it now. San Francisco has started with Mike Shanahan and San Francisco and Green Bay and right down the list, you guys. And it's been obviously so successful here because all you guys are in the finals of the playoffs and you're really making it work. But how much of it is now so much about him and he knows so much about you? Do you spend all your time going, well, if I think this, he's going to think that, and then I got to think that, and you know what I mean? How far does this chess match go here?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit overblown. We've been apart for 3 years now. Our teams have really evolved in a lot of different. They have a whole new quarterback. They got a lot of different guys on offense. Same as us, we're a different team than we played them in 2019, and we've become the Cincinnati Bengals offense, and so I think that a lot will be made of that. but it will be overblown. It's so much time has passed and the teams have evolved so much that doesn't really play into it. The issue is, you know what they do, but you also know the complement off of that look. And so you're careful to over prepare for something because you also know what they got in the bank there of playing off of that. So we try not to spend too much time concerning ourselves with all that.
Well, Zac, thank you so much for taking a little time with me, and congratulations. And on behalf of a lot of people in Cincinnati who have been waiting a long time to let you know just how long it's been. I played in the last Super Bowl that the Cincinnati Bengals had, and you can probably tell by the wrinkles on my face that was a few years ago. But congratulations, and it's exciting to be in Cincinnati, and really looking forward to this one.
Thanks, Cris. I appreciate it.